When I spoke to her on the phone, I got the sense of somebody who had finally gotten to the point where she wanted to take the reins, take charge, and be done with this demon, right? But I didn't get the feeling that she was getting a lot of support or encouragement from other people in her life. There might have been a few friends that, were encouraging her to get help. My mom encouraged her, but I don't have the feeling that she had the same kind of unconditional love from people around her that I did, and I'm eternally grateful for that, for myself and my story. I tried to be a support to her. I tried to encourage her. I tried to give her hope, but I don't know that she had a whole lot of that in the rest of her life. I think she more felt that people wanted something from her rather than they were willing to give her something. And that's pretty sad. So I started developing some of the symptoms of an eating disorder when I was around 14. I started swiping some of my mom's diet pills, which were, readily prescribed for women back in that time. But I think there were a lot of things that were pressures that I didn't realize were affecting me at the time. First of all, being in the limelight, being under the in the shadow of a very famous father, but then also coming out and sharing some of that spotlight with him. It was the time of Twiggy and Cher, and thin was in and thinner was better and thinnest is best. And I was very concerned about my appearance, as anybody growing up in Beverly Hills as a young girl would be under any circumstances. But then to know that you have to have this stage appearance, that you have to fit into costumes, that you're going to have pictures taken. And it was a point in time where all of those things I was painfully aware of those things. And being the oldest and being a perfectionist, I think I kind of took that to the nth degree and started to try and have a sense of control of what I looked like. But that can be a slippery slope, because you start to feel like you're getting control of your body, and it has this insidious way of turning around and taking control of you. And you don't really know when you step over that line, but it happens. And then when the time comes and you realize, okay, maybe I've taken this a little too far, your mindset and your psyche have already kind of been kidnapped, and it's really, really hard to stop it. There's this exhilaration that kind of comes with feeling like I'm really in control here, and people are complimenting me right and left, and the compliments were just more fuel for that disordered behavior, until, like I said, it came that line was crossed, and I didn't know how to stop doing what I was doing. It didn't have a name, or I didn't think it had a name. I just thought I was this very disciplined person that people were kind of jealous of for a while, as long as it was just the weight loss and exercise. I ate one meal a day, and I exercised 5 to 6 hours a day. So I didn't look emaciated, because I would eat at least one, full healthy meal. But this was by the time it got unhealthy. And so I didn't look, super scrawny at that point. But my parents could tell, and one night my mom noticed that my bones were sticking up through a sweatshirt that I was wearing as I fell asleep at the foot of her bed. And when she lifted up my sweatshirt and she could see my bones poking out, she was horrified. And the next day I was in the doctor's office, and even the doctor, who was a pediatrician, even the doctor said that he had seen this before, but he didn't give it a name. He didn't give me a diagnosis. He just said, if you don't start gaining weight, I'm putting you in Children's Hospital. And that freaked me out, because that was like all this control that I have mastered to try and carve this body out of what I thought was a lump of lard, right? I was trying to have that kind of control, and I was being threatened with having it completely removed. And so I was trying to comply with what the doctor said, but I had lost all sense of what normal eating was. And that's when the starving, or the restriction and the over-exercise turned into bulimia. Again, I didn't know that was the name. As far as I knew, I was just this weird person doing weird behavior, and I was the only one doing it. It wasn't until I was 20 years old that I finally read an article, I think in Time or Newsweek or something, that gave my behavior a name. And while it didn't help me get well per se, it made me feel less alone, because I realized there are other people going through this. I'm not some freak, that is the only one out there having this problem. And it also gave me hope, because if there were people talking about it and doctors doing research on how to treat this, then I felt like, well, maybe there's a way to get well. In 1977, I was finally put into a hospital, and it wasn't for treatment. It was to find out why my body was doing these weird things. Like, by that time, I was abusing laxatives, as well as being regularly causing myself to vomit and over-exercising, all those things. I think that hospitalization was the beginning of coming to a crossroads. And the physician that was treating me in the hospital basically told my parents and my husband, this isn't a physical problem. This is something deeper than that, and that's the kind of help you need to be looking for. And I think by the time I finally started seeing the doctor, I, as they say, was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And you kind of have to get to that point where you're willing to do whatever it takes to recover. I think it was really interesting that Karen was willing to talk to me about her eating disorder, because it wasn't the kind of thing that most people ever wanted to talk about. And I think that was one of the things about my book that made it as successful as it was, because I was not only willing to talk about it, I was willing to, basically tell all the dirty details. And because I wanted it to be as helpful as possible. And so when Karen started talking to me, I think it was because she felt that I was a safe place. She knew that I knew what it felt like. I knew what the thought processes were. I knew the mental games that you played with yourself. But I also knew what it was like to be on both sides, the ill side and the recovered side. And I think that allowed her to feel free to talk about it with me, because she knew that I was a few steps further than she was down the same path. She talked to me about some of the things that she did do and some of the things that she didn't do to pursue her anorexic body. She could not make herself throw up, so she chose to use syrup of ipecac, which I didn't know about at the time, or I might have tried it too, but it's highly dangerous. It deteriorates your internal organs. And I'm sure she didn't realize that. But part of the problem with any kind of obsessive, compulsive, or addictive behavior is you want your results, and you're willing to pay whatever price you have to do to get them. And that was a pretty high price for her to pay. And she wasn't an exerciser. We talked about things like traumatic experiences that we'd gone through that made life in general harder, for her, breakups of relationships and things like that, and the pressure to be out there on, in front of everybody making the music and being the point person all the time, and the fatigue involved in working that hard, the stress. But I think that she felt comfortable talking to me about some of the inner thoughts too. And so we talked about, why do we feel this way? Why do we feel like, we have to be so thin? And why is this so hard when you want to get well, to stop doing the things that you shouldn't be doing? And it's a dilemma, it really is. And I think a lot of people that deal with eating disorders look at things very black and white. You're either restricting or you're binging. You're either being very good on your eating regimen, or you're blowing it. And either way, you're bound to rebound from either extreme. And I think one of the things that I learned, and I hoped that she would learn, was that life is mostly gray. It's not really a lot of black and white. And you have to learn how to not only navigate the gray, but embrace it and feel comfortable in it. And I really was trying to encourage her to not stay in LA, that I needed to get out of LA to get well. And she was gonna go to New York, and I thought, New York is kind of like LA with an accent, you know? I mean, it's just, and it might even be faster and more pressurized. And I just didn't think that that would be the best environment for her, even though I knew she was going to be seeing one of the experts in the field. I wanted her to come and be in a more kind of rural and pastoral setting like I had been, where there are not the same stresses and they're not the same pressures, and you can really be in the quiet and listen to your thoughts and feel your feelings and really process those things. And you know, she made the decision to go to New York. And I think I tried to talk her more than once into considering coming up to see the doctor that I had worked with, but she already had her plans made and her mind was set on what she was going to do. And unfortunately, she also had in her mind a time frame. She wanted to be well by a certain deadline. And I tried very hard to explain to her, this has to be open-ended. This can't have a deadline on it. You just have to let it unfold. And there are no contracts when your health is concerned. And I was trying to convey that to her. Your health is the priority, and you're not going to be able to do anything if you don't put your priority on your health and let it take as long as it has to take. Because if you don't allow that process to go all the way to its ultimate conclusion, it could be a very dangerous thing. And it was.